I am here with Mr. Richard White. Richard, you and I, we met a couple of months ago over at Villains Con here in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and we talked very, very briefly about some of the things that you wanted, and I really am excited to be able to sit down with you a little bit more, really kind of go in depth in a lot of the things that you do here with us. But first off, thank you for taking the time to sit down with me. I definitely appreciate it here. And
Well, thank you very much for having me.
yes, sir. And just for a quick moment here for all of our listeners that we'll have coming on, if you would please just introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Richard White. I am a multi-genre author, meaning I write adventure, nonfiction, or pretty much you cut me a check, I'm happy to write it. I have no shame. Uh, and I've been writing professionally for 52 years now. Started when I was 15 working at a local newspaper, and I pretty much made my living writing in one form or another ever since. Started selling prose, short stories, novel stuff starting in 1998, and recently retired and taking advantage of my copious free time to try and get as many books out as I possibly can now.
Awesome, man. And if you don't mind me asking, how many books over your writing career have you written and published so far?
Probably 27 was 40 articles and 4 comic books,
Oh, man, that's cool. Well, I'm a big comic book nerd, so that's
and
really
I've got several coming out this year.
great, man. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I really want to be able to dive and get into, all of those stories. Like I said, I'm a big comic book fan, so you definitely have my ears perked up when there's some comic books coming out. I love adding to my collection there. So, Richard, let's dive in, I guess, to our first, I guess my first question here for you. What made you want to, kind of get into writing? What made you want to become an author?
Uh, I mean, it's been something I've played around with ever since I was a kid. I was really big into the YA mystery books. I mean, I grew up with the Hardy Boys and the Three Investigators and Brains Benton, Nancy Drew and books. And I don't know, seventh grade, I sat down and thought I could write one of these and started writing it. Luckily, it never saw the light of day. Although my poor sympathetic seventh grade English teacher did edit it for me.
No, yeah.
Not fun. Real quickly, just to accept edits because not everybody's going to like what you write. But and every so often when I think I'm really getting ahead and kind of get a little cocky about my writing, I drag it out and reread it.
Okay.
And one of these days I may actually sit down and finish it just because. I mean, there were solid bones to a story there, but I had no idea how to make it work.
Oh yeah.
Back when I was 12.
Hey, I mean that, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's a really cool age to really kind of dive in and start playing around. Um, one of the things I've really learned when it comes to entertainment business, singers, songwriters, authors, they always start around that age, between 10 and 12. They kind of figure out very early on the things they would like to do. It's almost like the project that just kind of keeps feeding itself, like your creativity. Whenever, I guess, whenever you need to get back into it, get those creative juices flowing, that's always a great little point to get there and write a new chapter to that ongoing, never ending story, if I may make a pun.
Well, and also it kind of timed out with about the fact that my growth spurt started. So my dreams of playing forward for the Los Angeles Lakers. And when you stop at five, I mean, I was 5'2" in seventh grade. I peaked 5'10", and I'm like, well, yeah, that okay, that we're not going to be playing pro basketball like this. So better find something else I'm semi good at.
Quick pivot right now. Like,
Absolutely.
no, I
That
dig that.
I was not going to be big enough to play middle linebacker either, so it was just right. I tried that seventh, eighth grade, and I got laid out by a few offensive linemen, and I said, I am not enjoying playing football. I am not enjoying having a guy 40 to 60 pounds heavier than me just lay me out on a regular basis.
It's got one of those things. First play, first quarter, you get hit. Hey, coach, yeah, we're done. We're going to retire early right now. Yeah. So,
Yeah, but you got to try it. But but you also got to you got to know. As I think John Wayne said, a man's got to know his limitations, and
yeah.
you gotta you try it, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't, more power to the guy who can do it.
Right. And the big part of that, you sit there and you make the attempt. You tried. A lot of people don't even try to fulfill those dreams. Um, Now, let me ask, with this one, because you had introduced yourself as a, within the horror genre, was there a certain point in time? Was it always the horror genre that fascinated you, or did you kind of get upon that after trial and error?
That came out of nowhere, to be honest, because I'm not a person. I classic horror, like the old the Universal monsters kind of horror.
Yeah.
I'm not into modern horror really per se. Not a Which is weird though, because my primary publisher is a horror publisher.
Okay. Really?
But he created a side fantasy in his company for me, so that the people who go to his site for horror don't get confused by seeing all this fantasy and stuff on the side.
Yeah.
But I had never written horror a day in my life until I was working for a game company. They had a setting,
Hmm.
and they wanted people to write short stories based on their on their games.
Hmm.
And they have a thing called Freeport, which is it's Green Ronin was the publisher,
Okay.
and they have a setting which is called the City of Pirates, Freeport, and it is not a nice place, as you can probably guess. But I do not know what inspired me to write a horror story. It just went there, and all of a sudden, my first short story I wrote for them was told from the point of view of a serial killer.
Hmm.
He was a sailor. So he sails into town. He spends a night carousing, does a little hunting, gets on the boat the next day, sails away. He doesn't come back for 4 or 5 months. Nobody knows who the heck he is. So he just kind of hunts wherever the ship lands. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, one night he happens to pick the wrong target, and their guardian hunts him down instead.
Oh wow. Like
So,
that little
but
twist there.
I mean, I went into that mindset of a serial killer. I mean, I had to go into some incredibly dark places in my own brain. I blame NCIS and Criminal Minds primarily. Uh,
Well, those are two main levels of research being able to use to spawn those ideas.
Absolutely, and it was like I said, but it was just there were times I would sit there and I'd write stuff, and I like going, "Ew,
Mm.
what are you doing?" And
That's
then my second story I wrote for them wound up being a damn near a Cthulhu story
wow.
because they follow the King Yellow.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, man, I've got a story that's dealing with, wreckers, people who set up fake lights to lure ships onto the rocks.
Yeah.
But instead of just killing everybody, they're capturing as many of the sailors as they can to feed them to the ghouls.
Okay.
And cultist, I mean, it's a kind of a cultist family, so it's almost Cthulhu meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That sounds really interesting. Like
So So
so.
because these were, and of course the matriarch is this old wizened thing who decides she likes one of the sailors they found because she needs a new companion, and he's like, "Oh God, please kill me."
Oh god. Yeah. Oh, sea hack. So death fed to huge giant godlike deity, or be the love thing of some old sea hag. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's easy. So
So yeah, so those are my two down, and then the one, unfortunately, they stopped doing short stories, but I was actually my third one I was riffing on was, you're familiar with the song Brandy, I'm assuming.
yeah. Look.
and you're also familiar with the Little Mermaid.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I have basically taken the song Brandy, and she is working at the bars. And while she may have her boyfriend who's elsewhere,
Mm-hmm.
she does invite sailors back home for dinner.
Okay.
Her mom's dinner, because her mom is actually a mermaid. She's half mermaid. That's why she's so alluring.
Oh, I get
And
it.
so she's bringing the sailors back. Mom has a nice dinner. Brandy helps herself to the leftovers, and they go on from there. So it was going
Oh,
to be kind of. So I was having fun taking a popular song and messing with the expectations.
okay. No, I like that. I like that level of twist. That has like a really good short film level plot twist. Have any of these ever been converted into like a screenplay? Have you ever tried to go that route?
I did do once back when I was working at comics,
Mm-hmm.
back in the mid '90s. Right,
Okay.
I managed to time out the great black and white implosion. So when we went from having 20 comic distributors to two within
Mm-hmm.
3 months,
Wow.
uh, the small press lost a whole lot of its outlets. And so, of course, I wound up getting out. But I was working on a project. We were trying to sell it to another publisher. But this is back when everybody and their uncle was on CompuServe. That was the place when you were comic books.
Okay.
And so I had actually pitched this idea, and I had all these artists and writers and stuff who were like going to contribute like 8-page stories, page stories. It was going to be an anthology,
Mm-hmm.
and it was called Shadowhaven.
Okay.
And Shadowhaven was basically it was a hotel where the creatures of the night go when they want to get away from humans.
Hey, I dig that.
But so when you get a whole bunch of basically immortal creatures together sitting around in the bar, what are they going to do? They're going to swap stories.
Right.
And that was the idea behind the comic. Well, unfortunately, like I said, it wound up going, and we had a publisher. The editor loved it, but the editor in chief didn't love it, and then another comic company wanted to pick it up, but they only wanted to pay royalties. And I'm like, going, I can't go to Bernie Wrightson and ask him to work for Spec.
Right.
That I'm not going to embarrass Bernie by even asking him, much less So I was just because I had Bernie Wrightson, Joe Monks, Joe Linsner. I had a whole bunch of horror people involved in this, and uh, so later on, one of the people who had been in the book came and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about pitching this to Hollywood?" And I'm like, "Right," because I'm living in West Texas. I have a whole lot of connections out in Hollywood,
Right.
and he goes, "Well, what? You let me pitch it for you. And gave me a check,
Hmm.
for and he said, this is earnest money, and then and we actually pitched to Fox,
Okay.
and this was when Fox was first getting started up.
Yeah.
So that's when they were doing Masquerade, Vampire the Masquerade as a TV show and stuff like that.
Right.
So they were interested. So the producer that apparently we were talking to was really interested in this whole, hey, another horror story. And so we were working on trying to get us a pilot script together, or a good solid pitch,
Hmm.
and went to the. But then by the time we got it all put together, because I didn't know anything about writing scripts, so we had to finally track down, hire somebody who could put together the pilot stuff, and then we wrote it all up and sent it in. And then that particular producer had been fired,
Uh.
and the new producer looks at us and goes, "And I want this. Why?" And we're like,
Mm.
"Okay, yeah, never mind."
Oh man. I wonder
But
if.
at least my check cashed, so I was happy. I made some money on it.
Hey, there you go. I mean, at the end of the day, you made a living. I wonder if they ever kind of kept that in like their vault, their backstory, and it probably came out a little bit later.
I mean, the trouble is, as we all know, ideas are a dime a dozen. So just because it sounds sort of like something you were working on, does not mean that somebody else didn't come up with the same idea.
Right.
It's all in the production.
Right. I agree with that. I agree with that. So, oh man, that was really cool. I would probably want to try to work a little bit harder and like try to pitch that, like, hey, you guys got to see this. But No, at the end of the
Well,
day.
the good part was is when I went back, I was doing some stuff at college, and I took a writing for TV and radio class,
Hmm.
and I was able to take my original pitch, and use that as my final project for the class.
Hey, there you
So,
go.
so my final project was mostly done before I even started.
Hey, there you go. I mean,
Just
that's
had
a
to kind
lot
of
of good
clean it up a
workout.
bit for the professor.
That's a lot of good workout. No, I like that. So, Rich, let's take a look at this. What projects now, and we can actually deep dive this in a little bit, but kind of piggybacking off of that, what projects now along that are we kind of working on, or you have in the pipe, or where are we up to these days?
All right, I'm glad you asked because in March I will be releasing Cry Havoc,
Okay,
which is the first book of my. It's a homage to the golden age of superheroes.
okay,
I've selected six public domain characters who are non-superpowered, so they're mystery women,
okay,
and I'm kind of making my own Marvel universe in that I'm giving the first book has three novellas where I introduce each three characters. The second book, which I will be starting here soon, will introduce the second three characters, and then the third book is bringing them together as a team.
okay.
But I figured since these are 80-year-old characters, I figured I'd give each one of them a novella to kind of shine and let people either remind people who they are or introduce them to people who have no idea who the heck these people are.
Right.
And so the first three will be the cat, which is basically a riff off of the Black Cat, which was Harvey's superheroine.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't use the Black Cat because Marvel gets all bent out of shape, even though they look nothing alike. That they're not the same characters, not using the same font. Nobody's gonna, she's not dressed in a black outfit.
Right.
But
But
Marvel has lawyers, and I don't really want to spend money on mine, so
no,
I just avoid that.
I
So
definitely.
I have the cat, Black Venus, who was a fighter pilot
Okay.
in World War II. She was fighting on the Japanese side of the war, and then a character called Miss Espionage, who's kind of interesting because she had her origin story in one book, her second story, and then they canceled the book, so she only had two appearances.
Okay.
So that's pretty much a tabula rasa for me. So I could pretty much do whatever I want to with her. But her conceit was she was the daughter of Matahari.
Okay.
So she was, kind of, she was born to be a spy.
See, I love a good espionage story, and that sounds though those are really three unique characters. Which again, just by listening to the description, they have three unique backgrounds, and it's going to be fun to watch the conflict of those backgrounds, but also the
Hmm.
marriage of how they're like, hey, we have a singular mission. Like, how do we complete that? That's going to be a fun
Yeah.
story to look out for.
And my publisher brought up a good question. He says, "Well, look, but there's all these superpowered characters. Why are you focusing on the mystery women?" And I said, "Okay." So I needed to come up with a good excuse, why I was using them.
Yeah.
And so is this is post the war is just recently over, and as part of the agreement for when they had their first big meetings in the UN,
Hmm.
they all agreed nobody with superpowers was allowed to leave their country. So they
Mm.
didn't want Miss Victory working over in Germany, and they didn't want uh, some of these German superheroes who, of course, were the bad guys
Right.
just a few years ago. They didn't want them just running around. They wanted, they basically said, okay, you can have supers. We can't, I mean, obviously they exist, but they're not allowed to leave their area. And if we catch them operating outside, we can arrest them and prosecute them.
Right. Okay.
So it was just it's so they can leave the country, but they can't operate out of the country.
Right. So
So that puts it up for but there was no restriction for people who just like you and me who just happened to be maybe trained as an acrobat or a fighter pilot or a spy.
And see, I love that concept, that noir concept of taking a different ability and applying it in such a superhero like fashion. For that. No, that can be a very interesting story to be on the lookout
Yeah.
for that. Um,
And I wanted to kind of avoid that. And like I said, I hate to say MCU, but I look at how Marvel built their universe building up to the Avengers,
mhm.
versus DC, who just threw everybody together in Justice League. And Justice League works if you're familiar with the DC universe.
Yeah.
But if you're new to superheroes, that was a really confusing movie because who are these people? Why are they working together? You know, why do they seem to know each other when we don't know who the heck they are?
Right. I agree with that because it kind of eliminated the story of even why do they need to work together?
Hmm.
Versus again that build up of how each character in Marvel, starting that first phase, how they all interact with one another. So you have the relationship, and then you have the commonality with each individual character. DC just kind of creating this. Oh, they're all supers, and yeah, there's a bad guy, but then you have that. I was like, well, why does Aquaman care? Obviously, he has his own thing going on. So what? Why does it bother him? You know.
Yeah, and see, and the only thing I think Marvel kind of may have a little bit of there was okay. They did the first Avengers movie, but in between the first two, I would have loved then to see because they did the Black Panther movie,
Hmm.
and then they did the Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
But that's where the Black Widow movie and Hawkeye movie should have come because because again those were the people who weren't really introduced. I mean, they were side characters like in Iron Man and this and that.
Hmm.
Why, but it would have been kind of nice to just get a little more, the by the time the Black Widow movie came out, it was kind of like, I mean, and no offense to the character, because I mean, I thought the movie actually was good, but it was kind of like, who cares? She's dead.
Right.
Well, I mean, this was too late. This should have come out like 4 years earlier.
Right. No, I agree with that. Being able to see that level of story, and actually that brings me to a really great question here, regarding with your story. But being able to see kind of what that story of what Black Widow was doing in between those
Hmm.
two major events, right? Like
Hmm.
it adds more depth to that character. It makes you feel more bonded to that character. So then when that death does happen, there's a lot more that goes, there's a lot more coming behind it because now you have the characters like how are they affected by this one particular death.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my question, is that something in plan with your story in between from like one event to the other? Will there be small little sections, maybe not full stories or full novels, but small little sections that help build that gap in between one event and another event?
I do try. Well, I do have kind of my Nick Fury character who's gathering up the team.
Hmm.
So, she's providing that continuity between, this event happened and then this event happened, but why will they all wind up at the same place? And basically, she's handing out her business card, says, okay, we're trying to do this. If you're interested, call this number. If you're not interested, this conversation never took place.
Right.
So,
Okay.
and the third part is once I start doing the novels, there will be room to do spin-offs on the individual characters too.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I'm trying to build towards novel where the Fury is what they call. Uh,
Gotcha.
uh, so I'll have Fury. Something is going to require the whole team.
Mhm.
Individual missions here and there that I can set people off on. Where they get a little more shine.
Oh, definitely like that. That's really cool. And again, just for listening, when can they expect that the first story to be dropped, and what outlets, what platforms can they be able to pick it up on?
Right now, the paperback has been designed. We
Okay.
are literally we have one correction that needs to be made, and that's ready to go source. And the book is being designed immediately right after that, which really won't take that long. So we're hoping to release no later than the end of March.
Okay.
Maybe a little sooner, but I would say safely to say, by this time next month we should be coming out with it.
Awesome. Awesome, man. Hey, that's a very tight schedule, but best of luck to that story there, and we'll make sure for all my listeners, I'm gonna make sure that have those links there to the e-store and to be able to purchase and listen to these stories here. The Furies, correct? That's
That's
their
it.
working
It's called
title.
Cry Havoc is the name of the
Cry
book,
Havoc.
and it's the Furies book one.
Gotcha. All right,
And
Cry Havoc.
as I tell my publisher, when you say book one, you're making an implied contract or book two will come out. So I've obviously got I'm already outlining the second book.
Well, hey, I'm definitely looking forward, and I'm definitely looking to be able to give that a read. That sounds very exciting, right up my alley as far as noir mystery stories.
Okay,
Um,
and just following on the heels of that, this summer I should be releasing a novella uh, based on a public domain novel, but featuring Reba the Jungle Girl.
okay.
I can't call her right, Rima the Jungle Girl. DC trademarked that, but Rima, her real name, she was actually Rima the Bird Girl.
Hmm.
That didn't sound, so I just went with Rima, just
Okay.
as is. But I've got a novella that will be coming out. I've got the art. Actually, I had the cover artist do 8 interior drawings,
Hmm.
so it will be. Oh, because since I figured since it's a novel, a little something for their money.
Gotcha.
Uh, I had some extra art done. I have a science fiction anthology or collection coming out. It's again public. I've been dipping into the public domain a lot here recently.
Okay.
I'm doing a collection of 7 space opera
Okay.
short stories based on different characters from the golden age of comics, but the Planet comics, Future comics, things like that.
Hmm.
Space detective, and different characters. So it was fun just getting a chance to go back and one read all the old comics. That was great. But two, I found uh, different artists, and each one of them did their own interpretation of the character. So not only do I have the cover art, but each story will have its own separate art. Uh, because yeah, it's public domain. I could have probably just pulled a page out of a comic, taken the color out, and used
Recycle that
that.
image.
But
Yeah.
honestly, one, I wanted to kind of get a kind of a fresh take on the character,
Yeah.
and B, some of that 1940s art was not so great.
Right. But here in 2026, it probably didn't age very well. Uh,
Probably not.
so for
So I just figured it was just simpler to bring in some new artists yeah, and some of the drawings I got back were phenomenal.
yeah.
I am because I basically said here's some of the pages. Give me something that looks sort of like this, and boy did they. And I'm really happy with the art that I got back.
Oh, that's definitely one to look. And that's in this title, Rima, correct?
Okay, the one dealing with Rima is called the Emerald Forest,
Okay.
and the space book is the space opera, and I we'll see if this survives dealing with my editor. But right now, it's tentatively titled "Crystal Tresses Under the Sky"
Okay.
because that's a line from Shakespeare. And then what I did is I took snippets from Shakespeare as like a little epigram for each one of the different stories.
Hmm.
So
That is very interesting.
I mean, if you can't steal from the best, who can you steal from?
Right. In the world of entertainment and art, imitation is the highest form of flattery. So,
And I found some really cool phrases or lines from plays that he had done where where he's talking about space, comets, the moon, different things, and it actually kind of influenced the way I went with the stories because I wanted to make sure that the epigram and the story made sense together.
yeah. Yeah, that's going to be really cool to look. And these are projects that we're looking at coming out
In July, around July.
around July. All right. So hey, for all of our listeners out there, a lot of great work to be coming out here. And again, guys, I'm gonna be making sure that we drop those links at the bottom so you guys can be able to follow and keep up and know when these great stories come out. Like I'm going to be following and making sure that when they're available, I'm getting my first copies as well because these are some interesting stories that I want to really be able to keep a part of.
And right, and also just we're in the final parts of preparation. But I'm going to, well, I think you saw when you came to Villains Con, you saw I also done a steampunk novel,
Mm-hmm.
uh, on Wings of Steel. Uh, we are doing an anthology based on the world of Wings of Steel is set in. The anthology will be called Southwatch Stories, and I have 10 authors currently lined up. Well, one counting me, but who are going to be contributing to the story, and I'm going to be kickstarting this. So the Kickstarter will be launching at the end of March,
Okay.
and I have stretch authors. We're going to try. We've got Richard Dansky, who is was associated with White Wolf, and I saw his story pitch, and oh yeah, you could tell he used to write for the World of Darkness because this one's going way off the end.
Oh boy. So all of
And
our horror and
and
gothic
then I have
listeners.
and I'll have Mike Stackpole as one of my other stretch authors. So I've got a gentleman who wrote for Star Wars and BattleTech and a bunch of other franchises. So he was very interested in contributing a story for this. Which I'm very flattered by because he read my story Bible and was like, "Oh yeah, I could do something with this." And I was like, "I will more than happily accept you."
I mean, that's such an array of talent to be able to collaborate working on stories here in the future. Um, and that brings me to a question I wanted to be able to ask you. And not just for me, but for a lot of our listeners that don't know, when a collaboration like this happens, like how does that process break down from, I guess, from idea to finished product? Like, what are the steps that are involved in making that a reality?
Oh, well, okay. With Southwest Stories, like I said, I had just kind of a general idea that because I have a story Bible for my steampunk because it was originally designed for a shared world universe
Mhm.
from a different publisher, but when that publisher went out of business, not only did I get rights back to my novel, which became On Wings of Steel,
Mhm.
but I got the rights back to the story Bible, you know, because I was the one that wrote 90% of it.
Right.
And so, so I've had this story Bible. I have this whole world, and I knew there was more stories in Southwatch than I would ever be able to write.
Mhm.
So, but tried Kickstarter before, and I've had varying degrees of luck. But there's a group of authors. It's called Crazy Eight Press. Some of them are former Star Trek authors, and luckily, I've written a couple of things for Star Trek, so we have something in common.
Okay.
And so I said, well, look, if you guys will help me put this Kickstarter together, I will give your authors first dibs
Mm.
on pitching stories.
Mhm.
And we had some we had some strong initial interest, but things came up here and there. So I have four authors from Crazy Eight who are contributing, and then I happened to reach out to a couple of other uh, people I knew through Star Trek. I said, "Hey, had some people back out. Would you be interested in pitching for this?" And sent them the Bible, and they came back and said, "Yeah, hey, would you be interested in a story like this?" And I'm like, "What? Absolutely," because I would have never thought to write that.
Mhm.
And then did reach out to some other people I knew. One of them was Bobby Nag, who is I had met at Dragon Con years ago, and we have stayed in contact. And it was like, "Hey, Bobby, have you ever thought about writing steampunk?" He goes, "No, but I'd love to try." And so he's going to be doing kind of a gritty, noirish detective story
Okay.
set in my city.
Oh.
And so we've got everything from rom to high political intrigue to grungy stuff happening in the dockside bars, and you know uh, monsters lurking in the shadows who may be preying on people. And so I mean I've just got this wide variety of stories that, again, stuff I didn't think I wouldn't have thought of, but
Mhm.
it's going to make my world feel even more alive when I put out then the sequel to On Wings of Steel, because then people could read these stories too. And so now Southwatch is kind of building its own reputation. So what I'm kind of hoping to do is do a novel, an anthology, another novel, an anthology, and then do the third novel
Gotcha.
to
Okay.
wrap up the trilogy. But this way, I've got something out every year to keep this to keep interest in the world.
Cool. And then I mean, that sounds like a very busy couple of years to be able to do that.
Oh yeah, and it's like herding cats because okay, hey, I need your pet. Hey, are you still interested? So I there's a lot of coordination that from me as I spend a lot of time, dropping little emails or pinging people on Facebook or Twitter or wherever I can find them, just saying, hey, haven't forgotten about me, have you?
Right,
Because
just
but especially since I'm kickstarting, I got to get commitments
right.
because you cannot tell people you're going to put this out and then have people not deliver their stuff.
Right. No, I can definitely understand that. And with that being said, I want to really deep dive a little bit more. Like I said, when we first met, we met at Villains Con, and you had brought to my attention a service that you offer to a lot of authors, not just expiring authors, but those that are out there. And that really intrigued me on so many levels. Number one, that you have the well-being in mind of story writers to be protected in such of an industry, and that really grabs along. So with that, working with all of these story writers here on so many multiple projects, I do want to deep dive into that service that you offer, and if you can tell our listeners about that, and how that started and how that's such a benefit.
Sure. I am. It is my privilege to be a member of Writer Beware, which is SIFWA's anti-scam committee. It was created by Victoria Strauss and AC Crispin. I joined them in 2007. Uh, I knew, and she lived, fairly, we'd seen each other at many conventions, and plus I knew Victoria and Ann from online writer forums and stuff. And
Hmm.
I'd seen the work that they were doing, and I was like, "Hey, could you guys need an extra person?" And they're like going, "Yes." It was literally, uh, and so I became the head dishwasher and bottle washer for the team. But I do some scrap work, and I also tend to be the person who goes to conventions to talk about Writer Beware because Victoria is much more comfortable handling the database, dealing with writing the blog and stuff.
Hmm.
I kind of like we said, there's introverts, extroverts, and I'm somewhere over here on the extroverted side of extrovert.
Hmm.
So I have no problem, chatting with people about stuff, either here on a podcast or at a convention. Uh, and we try to tell people we're not going to tell you who to go with
Hmm.
because it's not our job, but we can tell you who not to go with because there are people out there who are more than happy to separate you from your money and return as little as possible, to you. Especially now, oh man, it's not as bad for trade publishing
Hmm.
because you know now before the internet. Okay, before the internet, it was kind of rough because you had no idea who agents were. You just sent stuff out, and kind of in the blind.
Right.
Now you can kind of research, if you will, and that's where people get in trouble because they get in a hurry and don't.
Hmm.
If you do your research, you can kind of get a feel for who's actually a good agent and who's not, who's a good publisher and who's not. And you also know how to reach out to people, say, hey, do you know anything about so and so? Have you had a problem with them? So people who will do their research can usually stay out of trouble. The
Okay.
trouble is now many people are targeted authors, small presses,
Mm.
and they're selling them all kinds of useless crap. There's a lot of marketers. I mean, I get 6 or 7 emails a day from book marketers, and when you look at them, it's obvious they have no clue. I mean, they are not going to help you in the least, but they are talking about books. but oh boy, do their prices. Yeah, they're and or they've got publicists and they got you know we're happy to here's the hill I'm going to die on, and I know I'm going to get a lot of angry comments, but in my opinion, there are there is such a thing as a hybrid author.
Hmm.
A hybrid author is, by definition, an author who has been trade published, traditionally published,
Hmm.
and independently published. There is no such thing as a hybrid publisher. What they will do is they'll say that they're and you submit your stuff to them, and they'll go, "All right, well, this isn't quite what we're looking for, but if you like, we can publish this for you if you pay for it."
Right.
And
So,
so, is they're making enough money off the people who they could get them handle all the publishing and the printing and the editing and everything for a fee.
hmm.
And they're using the money they make off that to bring in just enough to actually pay to look legitimate.
Gotcha.
But if you're honestly, if you're paying up to put your book out, why aren't you doing it yourself?
Right.
There's enough people out there on the net who can help you walk through the steps on how to do it. Uh, you know, I mean, again, do your research, talk, look, see people who. Can I tell you what? If you see somebody out there who has published, and you can go to like more than just, and honestly, I hate to say more than Amazon, but but go take a look at their Amazon stuff. You can tell really quickly if they know what the heck they're doing or not. Look
Right.
through the first 5 or 6 pages. It's kind of like it gets pretty obvious.
Right.
Who's treating this as a profession and who's just throwing stuff out there.
Right.
But it's people who seem to be having some success. Talk to them. How do they get their publishing? Where do they find their editors? Do you even need an editor? Well, it depends on to how strong a writer group you have and how honest they're going to be with
Right. Okay.
you. But again, if you're paying for the art, you're paying for the editing, if you're paying for the design work, why are you then handing out and paying a publisher to put your stuff out?
Put stuff out.
Put it out yourself. And then suck up. Why are you only taking 40% of cover price while this guy's taking 60, and you paid him to do all the work? What the hell did he do to earn that 60% or 50%, whatever they're taking? You know, bring it all home.
Right.
Money goes to the author. And even if you're a publisher, now you've got to, I mean, you're wearing two hats. So
Mhm.
yes, the publisher side of you is spending money, but the writer side, you better be making something. Otherwise, why are you publish books?
Right.
Just put them up on the net for free, making money on.
Right. Exactly. So, and that growing bit. Let me ask: have you seen, from say like from the '90s, early 2000s to now? Is it a growing trend of those that are looking to self-publish to where they're opening themselves up to these scammers more, or is it or is it still a steady kind of thing to where like, hey, we've been trying to fight this fight years ago and we're still just with the same people.
Well, one, a good chunk of the people we used to fight back in the 90s to the early 2000s up to about mid 2010,
Hmm.
a lot of them have gone out of business finally. The trouble is,
Good.
it's hard to get law enforcement involved, even though they are cutting people off right and left. Because the trouble is, none of it rises to a certain level.
Hmm.
Okay, if you lose $6,000, that hurts.
Right.
If you're a state attorney general who's fighting drug cartels, cigarette smugglers, yada yada yada,
Hmm.
does $6,000 rise to your interest?